I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and this is Focus on Israel. Yom Kippur is known as the Day of Atonement and is the holiest day of the year for the Jewish people. Jewish people traditionally observe this holy day with a 24-hour period of fasting and intensive prayer. But in 1973, on this holiest of days, an Arab coalition of Egypt and Syria launched a joint surprise attack that nearly destroyed the tiny country of Israel. Hello. I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and thank you for joining me today on Focus on Israel. On September 11th of 2001, a destructive surprise attack was also launched against America. For me, it was a wake-up call. As I examined the madness behind 9/11, I realized that Israel had fought this enemy and was still fighting this enemy for its very existence on a daily basis. Like those who struck on Yom Kippur, the Islamic hatred for Western civilization and freedom formed the basis for these attacks. In an effort to fight back, I founded Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. As I met and interviewed leading experts, I wanted to share with you what I've learned. The mission of this series and PJTN is to educate and equip you so that you can share this knowledge with family and friends. We'll present information you'll not see in the mainstream media. With your help, we can reach Christians around the world with our message to stand against the growing threat of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel propaganda. That is why it is so important that in this time, we must turn our focus on Israel. The enemies of God and Israel attacked that Yom Kippur day in 73 and were at first successful. The coordinated attack by Egypt from the south and Syria from the north made threatening gains against the greatly outnumbered Israelis and came close to overwhelming the Jewish country. But God had a different battle plan.
Jerusalem on Yom Kippur Day. It began like any other Yom Kippur. People were praying in the synagogues. Then, suddenly, strange whispers. A tap on the shoulder. Noise. Noise that didn't belong to the holy day.
כאן שידורי ישראל מירושלים. השעה 3:30 והנה החדשות מפי אריה גולן. דובר צה"ל מוסר כי סמוך לשעה 2 פתחו הכוחות...
Kol Yisrael, the voice of Israel. A voice that no one expected to hear that day. At 2 p.m., the armies of Egypt and Syria crossed the borders.
בקרבות אוויר עם מטוסי ישראל בגזרה הצפונית של קו הגבול עם סוריה.
They invaded Israel while our people were standing before the Lord.
הערבית של תעלת סואץ, כלומר לצד המצרי, אבל נהדפו והרדיו המצרי אומר כי הקרבות נמשכים...
Once again, you don't think twice. You know where you have to go. From your home or your synagogue, you hit the road to your unit, to your second job. No time for thoughts about peace or war, just survival. It sounds almost silly till you get to the front. The air raid siren screams. You've heard it before. Still, you take no chances, not with your children. You head for the shelters. October 6, 1973. A surprise attack on the holiest of days. Egyptian forces crossed the canal. Syrian troops stormed through the Golan Heights.
done this following a preparation of some 3 years, a very meticulous preparation in which they were trained and prepared for this very moment by the Russians. The Russians connived at this operation. They introduced a tremendous amount of equipment into the area. Approximately the same number of tanks as are in the whole of NATO, and the same number of airplanes as in the whole of NATO, faced Israel on both fronts on Yom Kippur Day. The battle opened under the best possible conditions that the Arabs could have chosen, with the full connivance and backing of the Russians, with a sea and airlift ready to move at the moment that the forces moved, so that they could supply them, and with all the political backing that was necessary, in order to assure them that they could go on to victory should they be victorious, and B, in order to assure them that should anything go wrong, the battle would be stopped, a ceasefire would be dictated to the parties so as to save them.
1,400 Syrian tanks crossed the line in the Golan Heights. Tanks supported by all of the supplementary units and backed by the most advanced ground-to-air missile system. Iraqi forces join in. Jordanian units join in. A very small force of Israeli regulars is pitted against this concerted attack. Battles of incredible courage take place. In the south, thousands of troops cross the canal at 3 major points and hold their positions at 3 bridgeheads on the eastern bank. The Israeli forces are outnumbered by 12 to 1.
People, small as it is, surrounded as it is by enemies, has decided to live. And if we have to pay the price for living, we have to pay it. This is not a people that can give in. And we know that giving up means death, means destruction of our sovereignty and physical destruction of our entire people. We will not be destroyed. We dare not be destroyed. Therefore, the spirit of our men in the fronts, the spirit of our people in every home, in every city, in every village, is the spirit of a people that hates war, but knows that in order to live, it must win the war that has been forced upon it.
The whole country mobilizes. No age is excluded. All of the energy, all of the resources of the country are focused on one single thing: to keep alive, to win the war. $250 million is voluntarily contributed by the population. The Air Force, working round the clock, takes over the role of a foot soldier, buying vital time on the ground. Then it goes back to its usual role of commanding the skies. The Navy also acts quickly. In the first missile-to-missile battles in the history of naval war, it almost completely destroys the Syrian Navy and seriously damages the Egyptian Navy. From the very beginning of the war, the Israeli Navy is in command of the sea. Meanwhile, the ground forces, as usual, do their job at a very high cost. This time, at a very high cost.
And a musician sometimes uses just the sound of music, a simple, quiet melody, to say a prayer in his way. The times now in Israel are not easy, and the times ahead may be as difficult or maybe more, no one knows. But one thing you should know and believe, you are not alone, and though you have suffered your wounds yourself, there is not a single Jew in any country in the world that at this second is not with you. And in all the other countries, whatever their governments may say or do, there are people who know what it means to fight for what they believe in and what is right.
I have to tell you that our regular forces, the Air Force, the armor units, and other fighting units put a stiff fight at the first stage, which is known as the heavy battle, as the heavy defense. And because of their standards, because of their spirit and fighting ability, we managed to stop the attack. We managed to stop the attack, and we managed to start the counterattack.
In the north, the Israeli forces, having been mobilized, move in to counterattack. The Syrian forces are driven out. The Israeli forces continued to break into the area of Syria and create the new Israeli advance on the road to Damascus. As the Syrians withdraw, they are pursued in one of the biggest tank battles of history. They leave behind them approximately 800 destroyed tanks, more than half the total force they sent into action. In the south, the Israeli forces hold back the Egyptian attack, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy's armor. Approximately 250 of their tanks are destroyed. The Israeli forces penetrate across the canal into Egypt. By means of a brilliant military move, they push west and south, reach the area of Arabia, and block the entire Third Army, cutting it off completely. The Israeli army now stands 50 miles from Cairo. Where do we really stand now? We stand in destroyed Egyptian villages on the western bank, among death and suffering on both sides, in an area that could have stayed alive, living peacefully with its neighbor across the canal. The Egyptians now hold a substantial part of the Bar-Lev line on the eastern bank. Once again, the Security Council did its job. A ceasefire was dictated at the very moment the Russians realized that Israel would destroy the Egyptian force. Both sides complied. For the first time, face-to-face negotiations are begun. It's a dialogue that could say nothing or all. Who knows? For Israel, the first results mean a lot. Here, perhaps more than in any other place or country, every human life has a name, an address, a job, a family, a home. The prisoners of war are coming home from Egypt. The bakers, architects, accountants, waiters, students, the bus drivers are coming home. Our emotions make us vulnerable to the enemy, but we can't help that. That's the way we are. A man, one single man is our most important, most effective, most precious possession. The talks go on. For how long? Will there be peace or another war? As we make this film, we don't know.
המלחמה הזאת קשה, התנגשויות חריפות ומרירות, שריון ואוויר.
This is a difficult war. Long days. Days soaked with blood. We must continue to fight with the spirit, with the faith of a people that knows that it will not survive if it does not fight. We keep the memory of those that fell, locked in our hearts, locked tight.
לשמור בינתיים בליבנו פנימה.
Another war, more destruction. Their abandoned tanks are left in our backyards. They burned our books. Again, we rebuild. Beyond the Golan Heights, inside Syria, a wasteland, a graveyard of steel and flesh. Russian tanks all over the hills, destroyed tanks, Syrian and Israeli soldiers in awkward positions of sudden death. Somewhere the talks are on in the desert, later perhaps in Geneva, we hope. The Arab countries continue to build up their military strength. What do we face? Peace or war? To reach peace or to stand in new war, Israel must be strong, militarily, socially, and economically. The partnership of the Jewish people and the friendship of those in countries in the free world are the ones who help to make possible that strength. For years, the Soviet Union supplied Egypt and Syria with the most advanced technological weapons anyone could dream of. Even now, they continue to do so, more than the Arabs need, much more than the Israelis can afford. The Middle East became the testing ground for the Russian armor. The Soviet airlift was ready before the war. The American airlift got ready for replacements during the war. Israel is now facing the enemy on both sides of the canal. Husbands, sons, brothers, forced to keep watch. The manpower of the nation is mobilized to protect borders that are again dictated by military facts. Facts that prevent us from
Save for God's intervention and miracles, how could Israel have overcome such an attack and beaten back such an overwhelming force? I believe it was another miraculous event that proves God's hand is still upon Israel and the Jewish people. On a recent trip to New York, I had a chance to speak with Rabbi Pesach Lerner. Rabbi Lerner is the Executive Vice President of the National Council of Young Israel. The National Council of Young Israel was founded in 1912 as a nonprofit organization that provides religious, educational, Zionistic, social, and communal programming for its over 200 member synagogues. I had the distinct privilege of getting to know Rabbi Lerner, and he gave me the unique perspective and insight of a man who was there when the war broke out and lived to tell of it.
I was a student at a rabbinical school, 72, 73. And I happened to be in Israel at a rabbinical school on the Day of Atonement, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. And the rabbinical school was 20 minutes by car, by bus, from an Air Force base. And on Yom Kippur, the Air Force base is operating in a normal situation. And when the airspace above us became so busy and so noisy, out of that Air Force base, we knew something was wrong. But nobody in the wildest dreams imagined what we found out afterwards as a bus pulled in to the rabbinical school and handed out orders to get on the bus to the students, the Israelis who were in the army. And bottom line is, you look back, nobody imagined that they would attack Israel on Yom Kippur. And although there were signs in retrospect, I guess, I don't know if it was ego or gaudiness, because every war we had won, 6-day war was, open miracles, and we accomplished, and we did such things in 6 days. Nobody imagined the wildest dreams they would attack us. And they did. And we weren't, and unfortunately, the Israeli army wasn't prepared. They didn't have their defense mechanisms weren't there, the arms weren't there, the boys weren't prepared, and we lost. I had roommates who were killed in the war, who went up in smoke in a tank. I had study partners who went up in smoke. I had a study partner who was a POW in Syria for 6-8 months, and he wouldn't talk about it for years. Today, thank God, he's a very well-known physician, cardiologist in Israel. But for a period of time, he wouldn't talk about his experience, and not because he was shy. I only have to imagine that the experiences were, the wounds were, the trauma was everlasting. But you know what? Maybe that created in me who I am, because I saw my friends literally go up in smoke. And it was at that point that I made the decision to give back. Time is too short. But at the same time, we defended something. And for the memory of these young men and women who died protecting this country, we owe it to them to keep going and keep protecting and keep expanding and keep building so that they didn't die in vain.
That's our show for today, and I want to thank you for watching. The time to take a stand is now. One person can make a difference. Get involved and support pro-Israel organizations such as PJTN. Visit our website. Sign up to receive free action alerts and order our films to share with others. Please encourage your family and friends to tune in and watch Focus on Israel. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and all Israel. Be sure to join us next time as we focus on Israel.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, P.O. Box 682711, Franklin, Tennessee 37068. You can also support PJTN online. Visit pjtn.org or call 1-877-873-9020.
Anti-Semitism has reached epic proportions, and Israel is now surrounded by nations who seek its destruction. For Israel to lose just one battle would mean losing everything. As Christians, it is our biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and Israel. PJTN needs your help to reach more Christians with this urgent message. Please visit our website to become a member today and order our award-winning documentaries. You must decide that you won't be silent. Sign up now at pjtn.org. God bless you, and thank you for your support and prayers.